Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the 2018 NFL Draft Class, specifically talking about the New York Jets in terms of an analytics review of their class. In this video, we are essentially going to go over all the draft picks of the New York Jets and look at what their chances are to become successful NFL players based on multiple draft classes of production and athleticism data. And if you're new to the channel and you're new to the work that I do, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So if you're not familiar with what athleticism data is or production data, all that information will be available in the description. But with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to the New York Jets draft class in terms of how well they did based on analytics. So first off, we get to the first pick of the draft, which of course is Sam Darnold, quarterback out of USC. Very, very good start to the draft. Sam Darnold is one of only two quarterbacks in this draft class that has pretty solid all-pro potential. When you look at his high school production data, he hit pretty much every single threshold you want in terms of a Pro Bowl potential quarterback. On top of that, hit a very, very high FBS production score of 97.07 out of 100, which pretty much hits the Pro Bowl quarterback threshold as well. And when you look at his career production data, 89.54 in terms of his career FBS score, which hits above the All-Pro career threshold, Pro Bowl career threshold, and starter career threshold. And on top of that, when you look at the average scores, hits above the average All-Pro score. Sam Darnold is one of only two quarterbacks in this draft class to hit above the All-Pro career score. One was Baker Mayfield, the other was Sam Darnold. So again, Sam Darnold is one of only two quarterbacks in this draft class that has a very, very good shot of becoming an all-pro quarterback. So I think this is a very good pick from the standpoint of analytics and data. Then of course we get to Nathan Shepard, defensive tackle out of Fort Hays State. Don't really have a lot of production data for him just because his production was at a lower level competition, but very good athleticism traits, 89.38 in terms of explosiveness, 67.97 in terms of speed, and 86.35 in terms of flexibility for his size. In many ways, Nathan Shepard is essentially like a more athletic version of Taven Bryan. You know, Taven Bryan, of course, was the defensive tackle that was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars in round 1. And I think when you look at Nathan Shepard, you're looking at a guy who's pretty much like Taven Bryan, but more athletic. Now, the difference between him and Bryan is that one, Bryan played at Florida. Bryan also is younger than Nathan Shepard. Shepard is a guy who's a little bit up there in age compared to other prospects, but I do think that he has a very good shot to become a long-term starter with his athleticism traits alone. So if you look at it from the fact that this guy does have a pretty good shot to become a long-term starter, then I don't think that you should hate this pick. But there are a couple things that kind of hold him back from high-quality upside. Then, of course, you get to Chris Herndon, tight end out of Miami, Florida. When you get to his production data, he had a 63.87 market share production score. He doesn't really hit the All-Pro threshold, the bottom end threshold, meaning that every single multiple All-Pro tight end since 1969 had at least a 70.27 or higher score. So he doesn't quite hit that, but he does hit at least the Pro Bowl threshold of 25.75. But you do come into some question marks when you look at the averages at the position. The average All-Pro score is about 90.17, average Pro Bowl is about 81.64, and average starter 74.65. So Chris Herndon is kind of below the average score for an All-Pro player, Pro Bowl player, and starter player. So you do have some question marks from that perspective. And athleticism-wise, you do have question marks as well, in that he has 67.72 in terms of explosiveness, 55.84 in terms of speed, and 26.13 in terms of flexibility. Every single multiple All-Pro / Pro Bowl tight end had at least a 35.5 explosion score, a 78.89 or higher speed score, and a 57.62 or higher flexibility score. And Chris Herndon fails the speed score and the flexibility score. So in many ways, Herndon is someone who has a good chance to become a long-term starter based on his production data. But athleticism-wise, I think All-Pro / Pro Bowl potential is just not really in the cards for him. So this is someone that could either become a long-term starter or end up just becoming a backup when you look at it from this perspective. So not a terrible pick per se, but definitely not a guy that has very, very high upside. Then, of course, you get to Perry Nickerson, cornerback out of Tulane. When you look at his production data, 90.12 in terms of solo tackle data, 97.41 in terms of pass deflection data. Ridiculously productive player, one of the most productive cornerbacks in this draft class. Then when you get to his athleticism traits, 21.70 in terms of explosiveness, 91.23 in terms of speed, and 25.40 in terms of flexibility for his size. This is the only area where he runs into a couple snags. Does not hit, all-pro/Pro Bowl explosiveness or flexibility. And not only that, there's never been a long-term starting cornerback with less than a 27.36 flexibility score since 1999. So his flexibility score is also kind of troublesome as well. But I think when you look at Perry Nickerson, you're looking at a guy that has a very similar profile to Trey Waynes. Trey Waynes, of course, was the Minnesota Vikings cornerback drafted in the first round a couple years ago. And I mean, I'm not saying that Perry Nickerson is going to be Trey Waynes, and I do understand there's going to be some people that question, well, is that good or bad? But honestly, he has a decent all-around profile. He has speed. He has, very good production. So there's a good chance that he could become a long-term starter. He's not too far off from the starter threshold, which is why I have some optimism. But at the same time, he is someone who just has one really great trait in terms of athleticism and speed, but his explosion and his flexibility is just not exactly where he needs to be. So we'll see what happens with Perry Nickerson, but I do think that there are a lot of positives to him that could help him out despite some of the negatives that he has in terms of his athleticism traits. And then, of course, we get to Folorunso Fatukasi, interior defensive lineman from UConn. When you look at his production data, he had a 78.02 solo tackle score, 75.68 sack score, and a 68.87 tackle for loss score. As you can clearly see, does not quite hit the production thresholds, at least all the production thresholds of All-Pro/Pro Bowl level 3-4 DN, but does hit at least above the starter threshold when it comes to his data. And overall has above average data across the board. So he just doesn't have elite solo tackle data and elite tackle for loss data, but he does have at least above average across the board. So there's a very good chance he could become a long-term starter based on the thresholds. When you look at the starter average, he's not quite near the starter average, but he is close. It's like he's not above the starter average, but he is close to what the average is in terms of 3-4 DNs, interior defensive lineman and like a 3-4 front. And when he gets his athleticism traits, he looks more like a starter than an All-Pro/Pro Bowl player. 87.60 in terms of explosiveness, 29.98 in terms of speed, and 81.32 in terms of flexibility. Very good explosiveness, very good flexibility. Very similar athleticism traits to Harrison Phillips, who is another defensive tackle that's in this draft class. And for the most part, Folorunso has a very good shot to become a long-term starter. So he's not someone that has high-quality upside, but definitely someone that has a good chance to become a high-quality starter. And then we get to the last pick of the draft for the New York Jets, which of course is Trenton Cannon, running back out of Virginia State. I do not have any production data for him per se, because his production was at he wasn't at the FBS level. It was at a very lower level division level. Essentially, you can't really take production data at a Virginia State and compare it to the FBS. So I'm still working on getting enough of a sample size to kind of do that in the future. But for right now, I'm not really going to work off production data. All I can really work off of is his athleticism traits, where he runs into a bit of snags here and there. Only had a 41.15 explosive lower body strength score, 49.12 speed score, and 49 flexibility score. In order to be a multiple All-Pro/Pro Bowl running back, you have to have at least 179 or higher athleticism trait when it comes to your athleticism. So Cannon, just based on athleticism alone, does not have a very high likelihood of becoming a multiple All-Pro or Pro Bowl running back based on his overall data. This doesn't mean that he's going to be a terrible pick, though. It just means that this is someone that is more so likely to be a backup, spot starter type of player. So not a very high likelihood to become a high-quality player, but definitely a decent ability to become a backup rotational back. If that makes any sense. So overall, when you look at the New York Jets draft class, there are some good players here. There's also a lot of question marks. The only player that has high upside, at least high likelihood of becoming a high upside player, is Sam Darnold. Nathan Shepard has at least the athleticism traits of a long-term starting defensive interior defensive lineman. Chris Herndon could potentially become a long-term starter at the tight end position. Perry Nickerson could become a starting cornerback as a outlier. It's sort of a Trey Waynes-ish kind of way. Folaronzu Fatukasi has a good chance to become a long-term starter as well. And Trenton Cannon just more so looks like a rotational running back. Not a ton of picks. I don't really feel like they maximize the fact that they had fewer picks. But I do think that Sam Darnold, if he becomes a multiple All-Pro/Pro Bowl quarterback, which is very possible with his production, it could make up for some of the deficiencies that happened kind of in the later rounds. So overall, not a bad draft class by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely you're going to need Sam Darnold to pull most of the weight for the draft class. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so that you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace!